In a world where life's finality looms large, Laras Morgan, a terminally ill yet vibrant creator, ignites hope through her inspiring books and videos. But as her light dims, a mysterious offer of immortality from a shadowy figure turns her world upside down. Thrust into the night as a vampire, Laras' creations start manifesting the nightmares of her audience, blurring the lines between fiction and reality. Now facing a sinister threat, she must confront the darkness within and the chilling truth about her transformation. Dive into Laras' harrowing journey, where survival clashes with morality, and discover if she can emerge from the shadows or succumb to the darkness. In the heart of a bustling city, nestled within the walls of a modest apartment, lived Laras Morgan. To the world, she was a beacon of creativity, a young woman whose words and videos sparked inspiration in the hearts of millions. Laras' books, filled with tales of courage and resilience, were not just stories. They were lifelines to those who found solace in her words. Her videos, a blend of storytelling and motivational speaking, were a testament to her vibrant spirit and unyielding passion for life. Laras Apartment, a sanctuary of her creative world, was adorned with walls lined with bookshelves, each filled to the brim with literature of every genre. Her desk, a witness to her tireless nights, was cluttered with notes and manuscripts, the tools of her trade. Sunlight filtered through the window, casting a warm glow on the numerous awards and accolades that adorned her space. In this haven, Laras crafted worlds that transcended the boundaries of imagination, her voice a guiding light in the digital realm. Despite her youthful appearance, Laras' eyes held a depth that spoke of a soul much older than her years. Her followers, spanning across continents, were drawn not only to the wisdom in her words, but to the authenticity that resonated in her every sentence. She spoke not from a pedestal, but as a friend, a mentor, a fellow traveler in the journey of life. Her live streams were events in themselves, where communities formed, sharing stories of how Laras' work had touched their lives, giving them strength in times of despair. However, beneath the surface of this effervescent persona, a shadow loomed. Laras, in the prime of her life, was battling an illness that defied the best of medicines. It was a battle she kept hidden from the public eye, her smile never faltering in her videos, her voice never losing its warmth. But the truth was there, in the tiredness that sometimes crept into her eyes, in the subtle pauses she took to gather her strength during her live sessions. It was during a routine visit to the doctor that the devastating news was delivered. Laras, sitting in the sterile office, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, listened as the doctor spoke in a somber tone. "You have only a few months left," he said, his words a stark contrast to the bright posters on the wall promoting health and wellness. The disease, a rare and aggressive form, had advanced beyond the reach of treatment. Laras left the doctor's office with a heavy heart, the bustling city life around her suddenly seeming distant, like echoes in a dream. She walked through the streets, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Her legacy, her unfinished projects, her dreams. What would become of them? She thought of her followers, her friends, the people who looked to her for inspiration. How could she leave them? How could she say goodbye? That night, in the solitude of her apartment, Laras faced her camera, a brave smile on her face. She spoke of hope, of dreams, of the beauty in every moment. But as she spoke, a faint shadow flickered in the lens, unnoticed, an omen of the darkness that was to come. Chapter 2. The Mysterious Offer. The sun rose on a world that seemed a shade greyer to Laras Morgan. Just a day after her revelation to her viewers about her terminal illness, her virtual world was inundated with messages. Her social media accounts, her email, even her personal blog, were flooded with an outpouring of love, support, and disbelief. Fans expressed their shock and grief, sharing how her work had been a beacon of light in their own dark times. Others angrily denounced the medical system for failing such a bright soul. As Laras scrolled through the messages, her heart heavy with emotion, one peculiar message stood out. It was simple, yet bold. "I can save you!" At first, Laras dismissed it as just another well-meaning but unrealistic offer of help. She had seen her share of false promises and miracle cures touted in her comment sections before, but this message was different. It clung to the corners of her mind, a persistent whisper amidst the cacophony of condolences. Even as she tried to focus on her daily routine, the words echoed in her thoughts, unshakable. "I can save you." It was as if the message had a life of its own, reaching out to her through the digital ether. The following day, curiosity overcame her. Laras reopened the message. It read more fully. "I have followed you through my pains. You have helped me. Now permit me the honor of returning the help." It was signed anonymously, with a simple instruction: reply when ready. Despite her initial skepticism, a part of her, perhaps the part that still clung to a sliver of hope, was intrigued. She hovered over the keyboard, contemplating a response, but uncertainty held her back. She closed the message, telling herself it was nothing but a fanciful offer. The next few days were a blur of illness and fatigue for Laras. Her once vibrant energy was now replaced with a deep, unrelenting tiredness. Each morning, she awoke to a body that felt heavier, a spirit a little more worn. She could feel the relentless march of her illness, a silent thief stealing her vitality bit by bit. As she lay in her bed, the world outside continuing its frenzied pace, Laras' thoughts drifted back to the mysterious message: "I can save you." In her weakened state, the words were like a siren's call, a beacon in her growing darkness. She pondered over the unknown sender, their motives, and what salvation they could possibly offer. That night, in the quiet solitude of her dimly lit room, Laras made a decision. With trembling fingers, she opened her laptop, her eyes finding the message once more. It was a leap into the unknown, a flicker of hope in the encroaching shadows of her reality. She typed her reply, her heart racing with a mix of fear and anticipation. "I'm ready," she wrote, and with a click, she sent her response into the unknown, unknowingly opening a door to a world beyond her wildest imaginations. Chapter 3. The Awakening. The night was restless for Laras, filled with unsettling noises and faint whispers that seemed to dance on the edges of her consciousness. It was in this twilight of sleep and wakefulness that she sensed a presence in her room. Her eyes fluttered open, and through the haze of her drowsy state, she saw a figure standing by her bed, shrouded in shadows. "Who are you?" Laras mumbled, her voice weak and trembling. "I'm here to save you," came a dark velvety voice, resonating with an eerie calmness. Before Laras could react, the figure was upon her. She felt a sharp, searing pain as teeth sank into her neck, a pain that quickly gave way to a spreading darkness, engulfing her senses. When Laras awoke, it was to a world that felt both familiar and bizarrely alien. She was in her bed, but 2 whole days had passed, a blank void in her memory. Her body was weak, drained of energy, yet there was an underlying sense of something new, something different, coursing through her. Driven by a gnawing hunger, Laras stumbled to the kitchen. She prepared her favorite comfort food, eggs on toast, hoping to quell the emptiness inside her, but the moment the food touched her lips, a wave of revulsion swept over her. The food, once so comforting, now made her stomach churn. She spat it out, a sense of panic rising within her. Her eyes scanned the fridge in desperation, landing on a slice of raw, bloody meat. Without a thought, driven by an instinct she didn't understand, she grabbed it and began to eat. The cold blood smeared her hands and face, a stark contrast to her usually meticulous self. After finishing the unsettling meal, Laras walked to the bathroom, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. The reflection in the mirror stopped her dead in her tracks. There she was, bloodied, a sight so horrifying and yet strangely invigorating. She felt a surge of strength, a vitality she hadn't felt in months. But at what cost? As she stood there, staring at her own reflection, a mix of disgust and newfound power wrestling within her, Laras realized that her life had irrevocably changed. The mysterious figure had kept their promise in the most unimaginable way. She was no longer the Laras Morgan that the world knew and adored. What she had become and what lay ahead was a journey into the unknown, a journey into darkness. Chapter 4. The Revelation. Laras, her mind a whirlwind of confusion, raced to her computer. She scoured her inbox for the mysterious message, but it was gone as if it had never existed. Shaken, she decided to venture out for supplies, feeling an urgent need she couldn't quite understand. Stepping outside, Laras was immediately struck by the intensity of the sunlight. It was blinding, harsher than she had ever experienced. Shielding her eyes, she made her way through the streets, her senses heightened, her mind racing. Passing the local butcher shop, she found herself drawn to the sight of the meat in the window. Without hesitation, she entered and requested the freshest cuts they had. The butcher, oblivious to the turmoil churning inside her, wrapped the meat and wished her a good day. Once back in the safety of her home, Laras unwrapped the meat with an unfamiliar urgency. She began to consume it raw, the taste and sensation bizarrely satisfying. With each bite, she felt strength returning to her body, a primal energy coursing through her veins. As she slumped into a chair, satiated but deeply troubled, night began to fall. The world outside her window descended into darkness, mirroring the confusion and fear that clouded her mind. It was then, in the stillness of the night, that she heard a voice. "You have been given a gift, not out of altruistic means, but because you saved me," it said, echoing in the shadows. Laras, startled, responded, "I helped you?" "Yes," the voice replied. It began to recount its tale, a story steeped in a philosophy of self-interest. The creature spoke of a time when it was lost in the darkness, consumed by a hatred for the world and its inhabitants. It saw society as a collection of individuals using each other for personal gain, touching and taking from the world without deserving it. In this worldview, the creature explained, individuals were paramount, their own happiness and well-being the ultimate goal. But in its pursuit of this philosophy, the creature had lost its way, becoming detached, cold, unable to connect with the very humanity it sought to elevate. It was during this dark period that the creature stumbled upon Laras' work. Her words of motivation and clarity cut through the creature's cynicism. Laras spoke of the power of the individual, not in terms of selfish gain, but in realizing one's potential, in inspiring and being inspired by others. Her message wasn't about using others for personal advancement, but about self-improvement and making a meaningful impact in the world. This perspective, the creature confessed, had been a revelation. It offered a balance between self-interest and empathy, between pursuing one's own goals and recognizing the value of others. Laras' words had rekindled a sense of purpose in the creature, a desire to connect with the world in a way it had forgotten. Sitting in the darkness, listening to the creature's story, Laras realized the profound impact her work had had, reaching even the most unlikely of souls. But with this realization came a daunting question. What was she now? And what path lay before her in this new, unfathomable existence? Chapter 5. The Enigmatic Farewell. "Who are you?" Elara asked, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and curiosity. "I am no one," the creature replied, its voice a mere whisper in the darkness. "I am the unseen, the shadow. My existence is one of darkness," it continued, its tone somber yet strangely soothing. "Yours does not have to be," the creature added, a hint of earnestness in its voice. "You are a shining light, Elara. Remain in the light." Elara, desperate for answers, pleaded with the mysterious figure. "Please tell me more. Who are you really? Why did you choose me? How can I live like this?" The creature, dark and enigmatic, remained silent for a moment, as if contemplating whether to reveal more. Finally it spoke. "This is the last you will ever see of me, as I return to the shadows forevermore." Elara's heart raced. She reached out, trying to grasp onto something, anything that could give her clarity, but the creature, shrouded in mystery, revealed nothing more. It seemed to fade into the darkness, its presence diminishing until it was nothing but a memory, a ghostly whisper in the night. Left alone in the darkness, Elara sat motionless, her mind a whirlwind of unanswered questions and fears. The enigmatic farewell of the creature left her more confused than ever. She was now part of a world she never knew existed, transformed into something beyond human, without a guide or a path to follow. As the first light of dawn crept through her window, Elara realized that her life had irrevocably changed. She was no longer just the inspiring author and content creator. She was something else, something more. And with this realization came a daunting new journey, a journey into the unknown, a journey she would have to navigate alone. Chapter 6. A New Vision and the Shadows of Controversy. In the months following her mysterious transformation, Elara Morgan found herself writing with a renewed vigor and a fresh perspective on life. Her illness, once a sentence of finality, had become a catalyst for a deeper understanding of existence. Her books and blogs resonated more profoundly with her audience, reaching out to those engulfed in the darkness of life's struggles. Her words became like guiding lights, offering clarity and purpose. Elara's new vision of life was centered around the philosophy of living with purpose and embracing one's individual power. She wrote about the importance of pursuing one's own passions and interests, not for the sake of selfishness, but as a means of self-realization and contribution to the world. Her message was clear. True fulfillment comes from understanding one's unique abilities and using them to create value, both for oneself and for others. This philosophy, deeply rooted in the principles of individualism and self-empowerment, struck a chord with many of her readers. Elara encouraged them to take charge of their lives, to be the architects of their own destinies, and to find strength in their personal journeys. She spoke of the power of self-motivation and the importance of staying true to one's own ideals and values, even in the face of societal pressures. However, not all reactions to Elara's newfound vitality and philosophical shift were positive. A longtime fan, who had been following her journey since the beginning, began to express hostility towards her. This fan felt betrayed, believing that Elara had lied about her terminal illness. They accused her of exploiting her viewers' compassion for personal gain, continuing to write and make money under false pretenses. The fans' comments escalated quickly, going beyond mere hostility. They began to leave death threats, both in public comments and private messages. These messages were filled with anger and accusations, claiming that Laras had deceived everyone who had ever cared about her. The situation grew increasingly tense, casting a dark shadow over Laras' newfound purpose. She found herself at the center of a controversy she never anticipated, her once inspiring journey now marred by suspicion and hatred. As she grappled with the backlash, Laras realized that her journey was far from over. Her transformation had brought new challenges, ones that tested not only her resilience, but also her understanding of the complex interplay between individualism and the perceptions of those around her. Chapter 7. The Transformation into Darkness. The constant barrage of negative comments, messages, and emails began to take a toll on Laras. Her newfound strength and purpose were overshadowed by a growing fear for her personal safety. This fear intensified when she noticed a strange man lurking near her apartment entrance, an ominous presence that seemed to follow her wherever she went. Laras' unease turned to alarm when she realized this was the same man she had seen in town, even at her regular butcher's shop. His constant, unexplained presence felt like a sinister shadow over her life. Her anxiety peaked one evening at dusk when a knock sounded at her door. Answering it, she found herself face to face with the stranger. Without a word, he pushed his way inside, locking the door behind him. His eyes burned with anger as he hissed, "Liar, I believed you and everything you said." It was clear to Laras that this was the person behind the hostile messages. "Now I have to seek revenge for all those you lied to and hurt, including me," he declared, his voice seething with resentment. From his coat, he drew a knife, its blade glinting menacingly in the fading light. In that moment, Laras' fear and panic triggered something primal within her. The transformation was swift and terrifying. She felt her humanity slip away as her vampiric instincts took over. No longer just a woman, she became the predator she had been turned into, her eyes reflecting a newfound ferocity. The man, taken aback by her sudden change, hesitated. That was all the time Laras needed. She lunged at him, driven by a hunger and a survival instinct that was no longer human. The confrontation was brief and brutal. Laras fed on the man, feeling his life force ebbing into her, a rush of power and darkness overwhelming her senses. As she stood there, the lifeless body at her feet, a profound realization washed over her. She had crossed the threshold from which there was no return. By taking a life, she had entered the world of shadow, just like the creature who had saved her. Was this what it had meant when it said her existence did not have to be one of darkness? In her desperate bid for survival, had she inadvertently transformed into the very darkness she feared? Laras felt herself becoming a shadow, a dark spirit destined to forever lurk in the margins of the world. The light that once shone so brightly within her was now overshadowed by a chilling darkness. She had become a creature of the night, forever changed, forever haunted by the choice she had made in that fateful moment. Final chapter. The return to light. As Laras felt herself being pulled into the abyss of shadows, becoming a part of the darkness she had once feared, a wave of despair washed over her. "This is so unfair," she thought bitterly. She had only acted in self-defense, responding to a threat to her life. She hadn't sought violence. It had been forced upon her. In that moment of introspection, Laras clung to the belief that facing force with force was not only necessary, but morally justified. She recalled the philosophy that had guided her in her human life, one that championed the rights of the individual, including the right to self-defense. This philosophy asserted that when faced with unprovoked aggression, responding with force was not only a right, but a moral imperative to preserve one's life and values. With this realization, Laras focused on the good in her actions, the reality of her right to defend herself, even in her vampire form. She mulled over the idea that morality was not about unconditional pacifism, but about justice and the protection of one's own life and values. Slowly, as she immersed herself in these thoughts, Laras felt a shift within her. The darkness that had threatened to consume her began to recede. She felt herself moving from the shadow into the light, pulling back from the brink of becoming a wandering spirit of evil. Her mind, clear and focused on the principles of individual rights and self-defense, became her beacon back to her true self. Fully transformed back into herself, Laras sat down, a sense of purpose renewed within her. She opened her laptop, her fingers poised over the keyboard. Her next blog post would focus on the right of the individual to defend themselves. She would write about the moral legitimacy of facing force with force and the power of a mind capable of standing up against aggression. As she began to type, her words flowed with conviction and clarity. She wrote of the importance of understanding one's rights, of not succumbing to guilt when defending those rights, and of the strength that comes from standing up for oneself. Her message was clear. Those who initiate force must be prepared to face the full force of an individual's right to self-preservation. With this powerful message, Laras' journey had come full circle. She had faced darkness, both within and without, and had emerged stronger, more enlightened. Her experience as a vampire had not only tested her, but had also deepened her understanding of the complex interplay between morality and survival. Her blog post was not just a piece of writing. It was a testament to her journey, a declaration of her beliefs, and a beacon of hope for those facing their own battles in the shadows. It's time for a quick scare break. As we linger in these shadowy realms, a small favour I dare to ask. If my tales of terror bring you thrills, do not let our journey end here. Hit like, subscribe, and join our dark congregation. I must extend my deepest, most sinister thanks to those souls brave enough to support our chilling journey. Your contributions, kindred spirits, are the lifeblood of our channel. They help me continue to craft the haunting tales that send shivers down your spine and keep you awake at night, pondering what lurks in the shadows. If you too find yourself captivated by our chilling chronicles and wish to help the channel, consider clicking the thanks button below. Your support, dear viewer, is not just a contribution. It's a lifeline that allows me to continue weaving these terrifying tales just for you. Let's embrace the darkness once more. Let's get back to the shadows. In a world where darkness lurks in the shadows of creativity, shadows of words unveils a spine-chilling tale. Meet Emily, a struggling writer, haunted by an abusive past, seeking solace in her art. Her fate entwines with Nathan, a mysterious figure whose charm masks a terrifying secret. He's a vampire, a former mentor to none other than Edgar Allan Poe. As Emily's writing flourishes under Nathan's enigmatic guidance, she unwittingly taps into a realm of nightmares, blurring the lines between mentorship and manipulation. In a frantic race against her own demons, Emily confronts the harrowing truth about Nathan, leading to a heart-stopping climax that questions the price of creativity and the cost of untold horror. Shadows of words, where the thirst for art becomes a hunger for survival. In the gentle embrace of the morning light, Emily sat at her kitchen table, staring blankly at the divorce papers that lay before her, their ink telling the final tale of a love story turned sour. The house once filled with laughter and shared dreams, now echoed with the solemn whispers of solitude. It had been over a year, leaving behind a void that Emily struggled to fill with words and stories, her only solace. Her gaze shifted to the laptop screen, where a blinking cursor on a blank document awaited her next masterpiece. Writing had always been Emily's escape, her way to explore worlds beyond the confines of her reality. Yet, lately, the words eluded her, like elusive shadows darting just out of reach. The financial strain was palpable, the dwindling savings a stark reminder of her stagnant writing career. Publishers seemed as distant as the stars, and her dream of becoming a renowned author felt like a fading whisper. Determined to break the shackles of writer's block, Emily decided to venture out into the world beyond her four walls. She remembered a quaint coffee shop nestled in the heart of the city, a haven for local artists and dreamers. Perhaps the hum of the outside world would reignite the spark within her. She dressed in her favourite cosy sweater and jeans, an armour against the crisp morning air. As she stepped out, the world greeted her with the hustle and bustle of city life, a symphony of sounds and sights that she had long forgotten. The walk to the coffee shop felt like a pilgrimage, each step a move towards rediscovering herself. The coffee shop, Café Literati, was a charming little nook adorned with bookshelves and vintage decor, a tribute to the literary greats. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the scent of old books, creating an ambience that felt both inviting and inspiring. Emily found a quiet corner by the window, the perfect spot to observe and to be alone with her thoughts. She ordered a latte and opened her laptop, the blank document, now a canvas in a different setting, but the words still refused to flow. She watched people come and go, each absorbed in their own worlds. Some typed away on their laptops, others lost in the pages of books, and some engaged in quiet conversations. Emily envied their ease, their apparent contentment in their pursuits. As she sipped her coffee, lost in her reverie of doubts and what-ifs, a man took a seat at the table next to hers. He was an intriguing figure, his style a blend of modern and vintage, as if he belonged to a different era. He carried an air of mystery and an undeniable charm. Emily couldn't help but feel drawn to this stranger, his presence both unsettling and captivating. The man, engrossed in a leather-bound notebook, seemed oblivious to the world around him. He wrote with a fervour that Emily longed for, his pen dancing across the pages with a passionate grace. She found herself stealing glances, wondering about the stories he penned with such intensity. Unbeknownst to Emily, this man, Nathan, was more than just a fellow patron of the arts. His keen eyes observed her from behind his notebook, sensing the dormant talent waiting to be awakened. In him stirred the memories of a time long past, when he too struggled to find his voice. In the world of literature, as the morning turned to afternoon, Emily's page remained barren. Disheartened, she began to pack up, her heart heavy with unspoken stories. It was then that Nathan's voice broke through her cloud of despair. "Writer's block." His tone gentle yet curious. Emily looked up, startled yet intrigued. Little did she know, this chance encounter would mark the beginning of a journey into the shadows of words, where her dreams and nightmares would intertwine with the legacy of a being from a world beyond her imagination. Chapter 2. A Pact in Ink. Emily watched Nathan close his notebook, his eyes holding centuries of untold stories. She gathered her courage and spoke, her voice a mix of desperation and hope. "I feel like I have so much to say, so many stories inside me, but every time I try to write, the words just vanish. It's like I can see the story in my mind, but I can't translate it onto the page." Nathan's expression softened, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. "I know that struggle all too well," he replied. "The agony of a story untold, a vision unexpressed. It's a common ailment among writers, but not incurable. I've guided many great minds through such blocks." He leaned back, his gaze drifting into the distance. "Writing is a glorious art, a sacred act of creation that's often forgotten in today's fast-paced world. It's not just about stringing words together. It's about breathing life into ideas, giving form to emotions." Nathan's voice grew distant, as if recalling a memory from another life. "I remember Edgar Allan Poe, a brilliant mind, tortured and misunderstood. His genius was unparalleled, his vision hauntingly beautiful. I knew him, you know. His struggle with words was much like yours." Emily's eyes widened in disbelief. "You knew Edgar Allan Poe?" Nathan smiled enigmatically. "In a manner of speaking." Seizing the moment, Emily asked, "Would you help me? Guide me through this block?" Nathan raised an eyebrow. "And why should I do that? What benefit would there be for me?" "Desperate," Emily replied. "Well, I could pay you, once I start earning from my writing." Nathan chuckled. "What need have I for money?" She pressed on. "You'd be helping someone in great need. It's a noble cause." "But I'm not noble. Not at all," Nathan retorted, his tone hinting at a darker truth. In a last-ditch effort, Emily said, "If my book does well, I'll mention your name. You could become famous." "Oh no, that's the last thing I'd want," Nathan said quickly, a flicker of alarm in his eyes. It seemed all hope was lost until Emily, inspired by a sudden idea, said, "But think about it. You'll have the chance to create something new, to be part of the writing process again." Nathan paused, his demeanor changing. He looked at her, truly looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "Now you're speaking my language," he said, a spark of excitement in his voice. The air between them charged with possibility, a silent agreement forming. Nathan, the timeless observer of human creativity, and Emily, a writer, yearning to find her voice. Together, they would embark on a journey where words were the pathway and the destination was as unknown as the shadows that lurked beneath them. Chapter 3. The Veil of Creation. Emily's heart raced with a mix of anticipation and nervousness as she approached Nathan's residence. The house, nestled in an older part of the city, stood as a relic of a bygone era, its architecture a testament to times long past. As instructed, she found the front door slightly ajar and let herself in. The interior of Nathan's home was like stepping into another world. High ceilings adorned with intricate moldings, walls lined with shelves filled with ancient books, and antique furniture that spoke of centuries-old craftsmanship. The air was thick with the scent of old leather and wood, evoking a sense of forgotten elegance. "Mr. Nathan," she called out tentatively, receiving no response. Settling into an ornate chair in the main drawing room, Emily waited, her eyes wandering over the myriad of artifacts that decorated the room. Minutes passed in silence until Nathan finally appeared. "My apologies for keeping you waiting," he said with a slight bow. Emily noticed a dark red stain on his pristine white shirt. "How clumsy of me," Nathan remarked casually. "I must change immediately." As Nathan retreated, Emily's thoughts drifted, unaware of the events that had transpired earlier that night. Under the cloak of darkness, Nathan, the vampire, had been on the hunt. The city's underbelly was his hunting ground, where he moved with a grace that belied his ferocious nature. One moment, he was the embodiment of charm and elegance. The next, a feral predator. His feed was swift, a dance of life and death played out in the shadows. Sated, he returned to his human guise, the transition as seamless as it was necessary. Nathan re-emerged, immaculately dressed, the earlier incident seemingly forgotten. "Now let's get down to business," he said with a newfound focus. As they began their discourse on creativity, Nathan's philosophy echoed the principles of individualism and the pursuit of one's own vision. "To create is to bring into existence something that has never been before," he began. "It's not just a process of replication or adherence to trends. True creativity requires a detachment from the expectations and standards set by others." He paced the room, his words flowing with a passion that was almost hypnotic. "An artist must be like an architect of the soul, constructing a reality that is uniquely their own. The essence of creation lies in the bravery to be different, to challenge the status quo. It's about forging your path, not walking one laid out by others." Emily listened intently, absorbing every word. Nathan's perspective on creativity was invigorating, challenging her to look beyond the conventional. He spoke of art as a force that should reflect the artist's deepest convictions, unswayed by the whims of society. "The true creator does not seek approval or validation," Nathan continued. "Their work is an expression of their innermost self, uncompromised and pure. In this act of creation, the artist becomes akin to a god, giving life to their vision, unrestricted by the confines of ordinary existence." Emily felt a surge of inspiration, Nathan's words igniting a fire within her. She began to see her writing not just as a means of expression, but as an extension of her very being, an opportunity to construct her own reality through the power of words. As the night deepened, their conversation continued, weaving through the intricacies of creativity and the essence of art. Nathan, with his timeless perspective, and Emily, with her newfound understanding, embarked on a journey that was destined to transform not just her writing, but her very perception of what it meant to be a creator. Echoes from the past. Emily's curiosity had been simmering since Nathan's cryptic mention of Edgar Allan Poe. She finally mustered the courage to ask, "You said you knew Poe, but how is that possible? He died in 1849. That would make you..." Nathan smiled faintly, a hint of nostalgia in his eyes. "Ah, Edgar, a soul tormented by genius and despair. I knew him, yes. We spent many nights discussing the intricacies of the human psyche, the darkness that lies within. He had a profound understanding of the macabre, a gift for delving into the depths of fear and madness." Emily waited for him to address the impossibility of his age, but Nathan artfully sidestepped the question. Instead, he continued to reminisce. Poe had a vision that was unparalleled, a way of capturing the essence of horror and beauty in his words. He was misunderstood, often maligned, but in his work there was a truth, a rawness that few have ever managed to replicate. Emily's mind raced, trying to piece together the enigma that was Nathan. His evasion of her question about his age only deepened the mystery surrounding him. Noticing her puzzled look, Nathan gently steered the conversation away. "I'm afraid our time is up for tonight. I have other urgent matters to attend to. But when can we meet again? I have so many questions," Emily pressed, not ready to let the night end. "You may return in 2 days. If I'm not here, the door will be ajar. Let yourself in," Nathan instructed, his tone final. Emily, still filled with questions, hesitantly asked, "Aren't you worried about being robbed or burgled, leaving your door open like that?" Nathan's laughter filled the room, a sound that seemed to come from another time. "No one will rob me, Emily. That I can assure you." With those cryptic words, Nathan escorted Emily to the door. The night air felt colder as she stepped outside, her mind abuzz with thoughts of Nathan's mysterious past and his curious connection to Poe. The veil of the night seemed to close around her, leaving her with more questions than answers. As she walked home, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the brink of uncovering a truth far stranger than any fiction she could write. Chapter 5. The Night's Revelation. The memories of her past relationship haunted Emily like shadows in the corners of her mind. She recalled the countless nights she spent nursing bruise, both physical and emotional, inflicted by her ex-husband, Mark. His presence in her life had been like a dark cloud, suffocating her with fear and making her feel inferior. There were times she felt trapped, too scared to leave, her spirit gradually eroding under his abusive behavior. Mark's constant surveillance, his unexpected phone calls and unannounced visits kept Emily in a perpetual state of anxiety. She was always looking over her shoulder, fearing his next outburst. Returning home from Nathan's, Emily's apartment was engulfed in darkness, a silence that felt heavy. As she reached for the light switch, she froze. There, in her chair, sat Mark, his figure outlined by the faint glow of the streetlights. The stench of alcohol wafted toward her. "You've been seeing another man," he slurred accusingly, his eyes filled with drunken fury. "We're not together anymore, Mark. I can see whomever I please," Emily responded, trying to keep her voice steady. His anger escalated when she mentioned she had been at a man's house named Nathan. In a drunken rage, he struck her. The fight that ensued was chaotic, Mark's strength overwhelming. He pinned her down, his face inches from hers. "No one can help you. You are mine," he growled. Her cries for help seemed to dissolve into the darkness, until suddenly a tall, dark figure materialized in front of them. Nathan stood there, but not the composed, enigmatic Nathan she knew. His face was a mask of predatory fury, his eyes glowing red, fangs bared in a terrifying snarl. "I do not denounce your aggression, for I have slaughtered thousands." Nathan's voice was a low growl. "But it's you who have blocked the creativity in her, and for this I cannot forgive you. Creativeness is true life." With inhuman ease, Nathan yanked Mark off Emily, his hands gripping him like a child's toy. In one swift, merciless movement, his fangs sank into Mark's neck, draining him of his life. Then silence enveloped the room. Nathan stood motionless, his gaze fixed on Emily. The horror of what she had just witnessed was overwhelming, yet there was a part of her that felt an unexpected release. "Now you know the truth," Nathan finally spoke. "If you still wish my help, the appointment stands." With those words, he vanished into the night, taking Mark's lifeless body with him. Emily was left alone in her apartment, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. The realization that Mark had been a barrier to her creativity all this time dawned on her, but now she faced a new uncertainty. Could she trust Nathan? This being of darkness who had saved her life yet revealed a terrifying nature. Her future as a writer and her very existence hung in the balance. The appointment with Nathan was more than just about her writing now. It was a decision about the path her life would take in the wake of this night's revelation. Chapter 6. The Final Lesson. Emily stepped into Nathan's home, the familiarity of the open door offering little comfort after the previous night's harrowing events. The grandeur of the old house seemed to mock her recent brush with death as she settled into the waiting silence of the drawing room. After a while, Nathan entered, his demeanor unchanged, exuding the same charming, sophisticated air as before. It was as if the violent episode had never occurred, or perhaps was just an ordinary occurrence in his extraordinary existence. "You remind me of him, you know," Nathan said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Who?" Emily asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Why, Poe, of course. When he saw the real me for the first time, he was more intrigued than shocked. Oh, how he struggled to clear his block. But we did it," Nathan reminisced, a hint of fondness in his voice. "Anyway, where were we?" he continued, shifting back to the matter at hand. The conversation once again turned to creativity, its essence and importance. Nathan spoke of it as the true meaning of life, echoing the philosophy of individualism and self-actualization. Creativity is not just an act of producing art, it's an act of self-creation, of carving your identity and reality. It's a rebellion against the mundane, an assertion of one's own existence against the conformity of the world. As they delved deeper, Emily felt a growing sense of empowerment, her recent trauma slowly being overshadowed by a renewed sense of purpose. Hesitantly, she pulled out a small draft of writing she had done the previous night. "I couldn't help myself," she said. "The words just needed to come out." Nathan's eyes lit up as he read through her work. Yes, you have found it. The true life in you, your creativity. This is what it's all about." He handed the papers back to her, his expression turning solemn. "This will be our last meeting," he announced. "I cannot see you anymore. You have what you need. Please do not mention me in any way, in your writing or in conversation." Emily's heart sank. The mysterious mentor who had opened her eyes to a new realm of creativity was now closing the door on their acquaintance. She understood, in a way. Nathan was a being of shadows, and she had been a temporary visitor to his world. As she left his house for the last time, Emily carried with her not just a newfound understanding of her creative self, but also the haunting memory of a night that changed her life forever. Nathan, the enigmatic figure who straddled the line between horror and enlightenment, had left an indelible mark on her soul. Her journey as a writer, now unblocked and free, was just beginning, but it would forever be tinted by the dark, complex lessons she learned from the vampire who once inspired Edgar Allan Poe. Chapter 7. Legacy of Words. The Café Literati was bustling with an air of excitement, uncommon for the quaint coffee shop. Patrons filtered in, their eyes drawn to the display at the centre of the room. There, prominently featured in the bestseller section, was a book titled "Overcoming the Horrors, A Journey Through Abuse" by Emily. Nathan sat in a secluded corner, his presence unnoticed by the eager customers coming in to purchase Emily's book. He watched with a sense of satisfaction as each person picked up a copy, their faces reflecting a mix of curiosity and empathy. The book was more than just a memoir. It was a deep exploration into the horrors of both physical abuse and the mental traps that keep victims in a state of helplessness. Emily had skillfully woven her personal experiences with a broader narrative on overcoming adversity, her words resonating with countless readers. As Nathan observed the impact of Emily's work, a subtle smile played on his lips. In his hands, he held a black diary, its cover worn and pages yellowed with age. This was no ordinary diary, but a record of names. Celebrated authors throughout time whom he had mentored, each with their own unique story and struggle. Slowly, reverently, Nathan opened the diary to a blank page near the end. He took out an old fountain pen, the kind that had to be dipped in ink, and carefully wrote Emily's name. He paused for a moment, reflecting on their journey together. The initial skepticism, the unfolding of her creative potential, and finally, the dramatic conclusion that had severed their connection. Adding her name to the list felt like a final act of acknowledgement, a silent nod to her courage and talent. Nathan knew that Emily's journey would inspire and help many who struggled with their own horrors. She had transformed her pain into a powerful narrative, and in doing so, had found her true voice as a writer. As he closed the diary, Nathan's thoughts lingered on the invisible thread that connected all the names within, a shared journey of overcoming inner demons and channeling them into creativity. He had played his part, a guiding shadow in the background, helping each writer find their path. With a final glance at the bustling activity around Emily's book, Nathan stood up and quietly left the cafe. His role in Emily's story was complete, but the legacy of words they created together would continue to echo through time, a testament to the transformative power of storytelling. In the storm-ravaged cliffs of Caister, an ancient coffin is unearthed, revealing Khan, a centuries-old vampire disillusioned with humanity's greed and pettiness. Seeking a world valuing individual merit, he finds modern society still mired in the flaws of his past. As Khan's quest for enlightenment turns into a bloodthirsty rampage, the town spirals into chaos. Amidst his carnage, a philosophical awakening unfolds, leading to a profound decision to re-enter his slumber, hoping for a future where humanity evolves beyond its self-destructive nature. Will Khan's return mark the dawn of enlightenment or the twilight of mankind? The sky over Caister was an ominous canvas. Swirls of dark clouds churning restlessly as the North Sea hurled itself against the cliffs with relentless fury. The storm, a tempestuous force of nature, seemed to have a personal vendetta against this particular stretch of coastline, where the cliffs had already been worn thin by years of erosion. The howling wind carried with it a symphony of thunder, each rumble a foreboding omen. In the midst of this chaos, a significant portion of the cliff face succumbed to the assault. With a deafening crack, it crumbled, sending a cascade of earth and rock plummeting into the churning waters below. As the dust settled, an anomaly lay exposed on the newly scarred cliffside, a coffin-like metallic box, its surface adorned with intricate, archaic engravings. The box, sealed shut and bound by heavy locks, lay undisturbed, an enigmatic sentinel guarding its long-held secrets. The morning after the storm, as the sun timidly peeked through the dispersing clouds, a group of locals ventured towards the cliffs to assess the damage. Among the debris and devastation, they stumbled upon the peculiar metallic box. Murmurs of curiosity and unease spread through the crowd. No one dared to touch it, yet its mere presence seemed to cast a shadow of apprehension. The authorities were promptly called. A team arrived, their skepticism palpable, yet as they approached the box, an inexplicable chill permeated the air. Each member of the team felt it, a cold shiver that seemed to echo from the box itself, as if it exuded an aura of ancient, dormant power. They were instructed to transport the box to a nearby warehouse for further inspection. However, as they loaded it onto their vehicle, a sense of foreboding grew. The air around the box felt denser, colder, almost as if it whispered warnings of untold horrors locked within. Upon reaching the warehouse, the team's unease had grown into a palpable fear. Rationality battled with instinct as they approached the entrance. With a collective, unspoken agreement, they decided not to secure the box inside as initially planned. Instead, they hurriedly threw it into the warehouse, its metallic thud echoing through the empty space. They left in haste, not looking back, trying to shake off the cold dread that clung to them. The box lay there, in the dimly lit warehouse, silent, yet imposing. Unbeknownst to all, the lock that had held it shut for centuries was now slightly ajar, weakened by the impact. Inside, something ancient stirred, sensing the change, the opportunity, the era it had long awaited was about to begin. Chapter 2. The Self-Burial of Khan. The year was 1835, and the world was a place of tumultuous change and unyielding ambition. In the midst of this evolving era, there existed an entity far removed from the ordinary scope of mankind. Khan, an elder vampire whose existence spanned over 3 centuries. Khan was not just a creature of the night, he was a being of immense power, intellect, and an ever-growing awareness that set him apart, even from his own kind. Over the years, Khan's abilities had expanded exponentially. His strength, senses, and intellect had grown to such an extent that he found himself evolving beyond the trivial pursuits of mankind. He observed the world around him with a dispassionate eye, increasingly disillusioned with what he saw. The society of the time was rife with the pursuit of power, but it was a power not earned through creativity, hard work, or personal achievement. Instead, it was a power sought through the exploitation of others, a parasitic approach to success that Khan found distasteful and repugnant. Khan's perspective echoed a philosophy that championed the virtue of individual achievement and the pursuit of one's own happiness as the highest moral aim. He lamented the lack of appreciation for the individual who sought to create, to innovate, and to add value through their own efforts. Instead, he saw a society where many thrived by feeding off the productive capacities of others, a behavior he found more monstrous than his own vampiric nature. Unable to bear the sight of a world that seemed to reward collectivism over individual merit, Khan sought a way to escape. He longed for a future where society would evolve, where the individual's achievements and contributions would be celebrated rather than exploited. In a decisive act, Khan orchestrated his own burial. He hired a group of men, oblivious to his true nature, to transport him to a secluded spot near the sea. There, under the cloak of night, they buried him deep in the ground, in a specially crafted metal coffin designed to withstand the test of time. Khan's intention was to slumber until a time came when the world would have changed, hoping against hope that mankind would outgrow its collective leanings and embrace the ideals of individual merit and value. As the earth closed over his coffin, Khan entered a state of deep torpor, his last thoughts clinging to the hope that when he awoke, he would find a world where the individual was revered, not for what could be taken from them, but for what they could uniquely contribute. Little did he know, the world he longed for was still a distant dream, and the reality he would awaken to was one that would challenge his ideals in ways he never imagined. It's time for a quick scare break. As we linger in these shadowy realms, a small favour I dare to ask. If my tales of terror bring you thrills, do not let our journey end here. Hit like, subscribe, and join our dark congregation. Chapter 3. The Awakening and the Hunt. In the dim, dust-laden air of the warehouse, the metal box that had been Khan's tomb for nearly 2 centuries sat abandoned on the cold concrete floor. The force of its unceremonious landing had triggered something within. Inside the coffin, the ancient vampire, Khan, stirred from his long slumber. His senses, dulled by the passage of time, began to sharpen, and an overwhelming hunger clawed at his being. He was ravenous, a hunger only satiated by one thing: blood. The first lock on the coffin clicked open as if compelled by an invisible hand. Then, one by one, the remaining locks followed suit, releasing their hold. The metal lid creaked open, and Khan emerged like a spectre from a bygone era. He inhaled deeply, the air filling his lungs with the sense of a world he no longer recognized. but amidst the unfamiliarity, one desire dominated his thoughts, the primal, urgent need for blood. As night enveloped the town, Khan set out on his hunt. His movements were a blend of grace and menace, a predator perfected through centuries of existence. He stalked the shadowed streets, his heightened senses guiding him to his prey. The unsuspecting victims, lost in their mundane routines, were oblivious to the danger that lurked in the darkness. Khan's attacks were swift and ruthless. Each victim was a mere vessel to satiate his thirst, their lifeblood a means to regain his full strength. He left a trail of lifeless bodies in his wake, each one drained of blood, their faces frozen in a final expression of terror. As dawn approached, Khan retreated to the shadows, his hunger temporarily quelled. The town awoke to a scene of horror. The news of the gruesome discoveries spread rapidly, plunging the community into chaos. Fear gripped the hearts of the townspeople as they grappled with the reality of the carnage. The body count was mounting, and with it, the realization that something sinister, something beyond their understanding, was at play. Whispers of a nightmarish creature began to circulate, a being that struck under the cover of darkness. The authorities were baffled, with no clues to go on, and the town found itself in the grip of a terror that seemed to echo from the darkest corners of folklore. Khan, having initiated his reign of terror, lurked in the shadows, his ancient mind pondering the state of this new world he had awoken to, a world that was about to learn the true horror of what had been unearthed. Chapter 4. The Vampire's Refuge and Renewed Pursuits. In the countryside surrounding the town, where the landscape was dotted with farms and secluded fields, Khan found his sanctuary from the piercing rays of the sun. He chose a farmer's field, recently ploughed, the earth soft and muddied, a perfect haven for a creature of the night. Transforming into a wisp of smoke, he seeped into the ground, the cool, damp earth enveloping him in its embrace. Here, beneath the surface, he could rest undisturbed, the soil above shielding him from the sunlight that threatened his existence. As night once again cloaked the world in darkness, Khan, rejuvenated and eager to feed, the hunger that defined his existence had returned, driving him to seek out another victim. He moved through the night like a shadow, a malevolent force barely perceptible to the human eye. His prey that night was a lone traveler, journeying through the less frequented paths of the town. The man's fate was sealed the moment Khan's icy gaze fell upon him. With a predator's precision, Khan cornered his prey, striking with a ferocity that left no room for escape. The attack was brutal and swift, the man's life ebbing away as Khan drank deeply, his thirst momentarily quenched by the warm, scarlet flow. Satisfied, Khan made his way to the cliffs where he had first emerged into this new world. Hidden among the rocks, he retrieved another, smaller box that he had buried along with his coffin. This one contained gold, a treasure amassed over centuries, a testament to his long and unnatural life. The next day, Khan, wrapped in garments to protect his skin from the sun's deadly rays, ventured into the town. His appearance was that of a reclusive stranger, his face obscured, drawing minimal attention. He visited a discreet dealer in precious metals, exchanging a portion of his gold for currency. The transaction was swift, the dealer too engrossed in the value of the gold to question its origins. With his newfound wealth, Khan rented a secluded farmhouse, a place where he could find refuge during the day and plan his nocturnal activities. The house, set away from prying eyes, provided the perfect cover for a being who existed in the shadows. It was here that Khan could rest, contemplate his next move, and perhaps ponder the state of this new world he had awakened to, a world that was yet to reveal its true nature to an ancient vampire seeking a place in its modern tapestry. Chapter 5. The Disillusioned Return. In the dimly lit interior of his newly acquired farmhouse, Khan waited, with a mix of anticipation and skepticism. The clock ticked steadily towards 7 o'clock p.m., the appointed hour. As it struck 6:55, a soft, hesitant knock echoed at the door. Opening it, Khan was met with the sight of a visibly nervous man, a lesser vampire whose aura betrayed his subordinate status in the vampiric hierarchy. The man wasted no time, his words spilling out in a rush. "It's true! You have returned!" His eyes flickered with a mix of fear and reverence as he addressed Khan. "It is indeed an honor to meet you," he added, his voice tinged with awe. Khan's response was curt, devoid of any need for pleasantries. "Enough of that. I do not need praise or your boot-licking. I need to know how far advanced man has come. Sit down and tell me about it." The man, whom Khan would come to know as Vincent, produced a bottle from his coat and poured a scarlet liquid into a cup. "The very best lineage, master," he said, offering it to Khan. Khan took the cup, his focus unwavering. "Now sit and tell me about this world," he commanded, sipping the blood. Vincent, eager to comply, began his narrative. He spoke of the world's advancements in intelligence and technology, but with a tone of disillusionment. He explained how, despite the passage of time, mankind had not evolved in the way Khan had hoped. The pursuit of power still dominated, but it was a power not earned through hard work or individual merit. Instead, it was sought through manipulation, favors, and guilt. A corrupt system where the value of the individual was often overshadowed by the collective's demands. He detailed a society where true creativity and innovation were stifled by a culture that rewarded conformity and penalized those who dared to stand out. The individual's efforts and achievements were frequently undermined by a system that favored collective mediocrity over personal excellence. Vincent painted a picture of a world still entrenched in the very issues that had driven Khan to his centuries-long slumber. As Khan listened, his disappointment grew. He had hoped that mankind would have progressed beyond the collective mindset, embracing the potential and power of the individual. Instead, he found a world that, while different in appearance, still echoed the same shortcomings of his past. The realization that his long wait had been in vain weighed heavily upon him. The world he had longed for, where the individual's value and effort were recognized and celebrated, remained a distant, unfulfilled dream. Khan's return, rather than being a reawakening into a new era of enlightenment, had brought him face to face with the harsh truth that the nature of man, in many ways, remained unchanged. Chapter 6. The Inevitable Collapse. Khan's fury was a tempest within the confines of the farmhouse. He had slept for 200 years, hoping for a new dawn of human civilization, only to awaken to a world that mirrored the flaws of his past. His first impulse was destructive, to take matters into his own hands, to unleash his wrath upon mankind. He shared his plan with Vincent, detailing a grandiose and merciless scheme to crush humanity under his power. However, Vincent, surprising Khan with his insight, offered a different perspective. "Master Khan," Vincent began, his voice steady despite the intensity in the room, "I have observed humanity, seen them inching closer to their own ruin. The rise of taxes, the tightening controls over individuals, all of it is leading them to a precipice. There is no need for us to bring about their downfall. They are well on their way to doing it themselves." Vincent explained how he had watched the political landscape become a battleground, not for who could add the most value or genuinely aid the populace, but for who could curry the most favors, who had the broadest network of influence. "This path they tread," Vincent said, "is one that leads only to destruction." Khan listened, his anger simmering as Vincent painted a picture of a society teetering on the brink of collapse. A system that took from its best producers to reward those who claimed the greatest needs was inherently unsustainable. It was a cycle of dependency and entitlement that over time would erode the very foundations of society. "Look at the politicians, the leaders," Vincent continued. "Their battles are not for the betterment of their people, but for personal gain, for power. Such a system, where the individual's merit and contribution are overshadowed by collective demands and political maneuvering, cannot endure. It is a society that consumes itself, a self-devouring entity." Khan's rage began to give way to a cold realization. The society he had hoped to find, one that celebrated and revered the individual's effort and value, was further away than ever. Instead, he had awakened to a world on the verge of self-destruction, a world that had betrayed the principles he yearned to see flourish. The thought of sitting back and watching humanity crumble under the weight of its own flawed ideology was a bitter pill for Khan to swallow. Yet, as he considered Vincent's words, he understood the futility in attempting to destroy what was already breaking apart. The realization that his long slumber had been for naught, that his dreams of a better world were still just that, dreams, was a harsh truth that Khan, in his centuries of existence, had never been prepared to face. Chapter 7. The Battlefield Feast. Khan, though frustrated, conceded to Vincent's logic. "I will need to slumber again," he declared with a note of resignation. "You will make the arrangements. Should I stay in this world, I will be forced to destroy it myself." As Vincent began the preparations for Khan's reinterment, Khan revealed the grim necessity that preceded his long sleep. "In order to once again slumber, I must feed extensively. Like an animal preparing for hibernation," he explained. "I estimate around 100 victims." Vincent, visibly troubled, responded, "Master, such a number will surely bring undue attention to our kind." Khan, with a dismissive snort, replied, "Ha, surely there is a war somewhere on this petty planet." He then spoke with a cold, hard truth about humanity's nature. "Mankind is its own greatest predator. No other species slaughters its own as humans do. There is always a conflict somewhere, always a war." The scene then shifts to a battlefield, a hellish landscape of destruction and chaos. The location and the factions involved remain unnamed, but the horrors of war were universally recognizable. Artillery fire lit up the night sky, the ground shook with the concussions of bombs, and the air was filled with the cries of the wounded and the dying. In this maelstrom of violence, Khan moved like a spectre, his form weaved through the chaos, unnoticed by the combatants who were too engaged in their own survival. He was a shadow among shadows, his presence only felt in the fleeting moments before he struck. Khan was methodical in his approach, taking blood from soldiers of both sides equally, careful not to upset the delicate balance of the conflict. To him, each soldier was a means to an end, their blood a necessity for his impending hibernation. He fed with an efficiency born of centuries of predation, each victim left lifeless in the muddy, blood-soaked earth. The battlefield, with its unending supply of victims, was a grim buffet for Khan. The irony of the situation was not lost on him. He was a vampire, a being of legend and nightmare, yet his actions paled in comparison to the carnage wrought by humans upon each other. In this setting, Khan's feeding was just another layer of horror in the tapestry of human brutality. As he moved through the battlefield, Khan's thoughts were conflicted. The savagery of war, the senseless loss of life, was a stark reminder of the dark aspects of human nature he had hoped to escape. Yet, it also served as a justification for his decision to retreat once more into the earth, away from a world that seemed perpetually caught in a cycle of violence and destruction. Finale chapter: The Second Burial. Khan returned to the farmhouse on the east coast of England, his grim task on the battlefield completed. The preparations for his second interment were already in place, meticulously coordinated by Vincent. Under the cover of night, a small, trusted team began to dig at the calculated spot near the cliffs, a location chosen based on estimates of how long it would take for the cliffs to erode and reveal Khan once more. As they worked, Khan and Vincent shared a final conversation. Should mankind evolve to a stage of enlightenment, where the pursuit is to grow and reach the pinnacle of individual potential, you will wake me, Khan instructed, solemnly. Yes, Master, Vincent replied with a nod, understanding the weight of this responsibility. Khan took a moment to reflect on the society he was leaving behind. He spoke of a world where the rewards often went not to those with the greatest ability or the most to offer, but to those with the least ability and the loudest voices. He lamented a society that undermined the value of individual merit and achievement, a system where the collective often drowned out the voices of the truly innovative and productive. This, Khan believed, was a path to inevitable collapse, a world that rewarded mediocrity and penalized excellence could not sustain itself indefinitely. With these final thoughts, Khan entered the metal coffin once more. Vincent and the team sealed him inside, their actions methodical and respectful. The coffin was then placed deep within the earth, hidden once again from the world above. As Vincent walked away from the burial site, Khan's last words echoed in his mind. Should I wake again and find humanity as it is, it will be time for me to eradicate it for a new world. These words were a stark reminder of the potential consequences should humanity fail to evolve beyond its current state. Vincent looked up at the night sky, the stars a silent testament to the passage of time and the cycles of history. He wondered about the future, about the path humanity would take, and whether it would one day awaken a being like Khan to a world worthy of his ideals, or to a world that needed to be reborn from its ashes. With these thoughts, Vincent disappeared into the night, leaving the sleeping vampire beneath the earth, waiting for the world to change. Thank you for joining me on this chilling journey. If your thirst for the unknown and the unexplained is still unquenched, I invite you to delve deeper into the abyss of terror. Just beyond the veil of reality, another story awaits to send shivers down your spine. Dare to join me in the next video, where the unknown becomes known and the unseen seen. Until then, keep the lights dim and your mind open. This is Professor Shadow, signing off.